The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Hello, and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network, sponsored by Cref. I'm Peter Martin, Vice President of Business Development for Cref. We're located in Boston and Dallas. You can find more at cref.com. I am happy to be joined today by Danielle Gathje. Danielle is the Vice President of Hospital Operations for Fairview Health Services in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Danielle, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. So Danielle is one of 3 candidates running for the ASHE Presidency this year. And this is the first of a series. We're going to interview all of the candidates. We start today with Danielle. Danielle has just returned, as have I, from the ASHE Innovation Conference held last week in Anaheim. Before we talk a little bit about your candidacy, Danielle, and why you're running and what you'd like to accomplish, it was a first ASHE Innovation Conference. What were your thoughts on the conference, and how did you think it went?
Well, thanks again for having me. So I thought the conference went really well. It's interesting because I was reflecting on my first conference in 2008 when the only people I knew were the people who brought me with them and to what it is today. And some of the things that I find exciting about the rebranding is that the people are still the same, right? Who we get to know. And it's so different for me because now I know what feels like half the people that come to the conference, which is great. But we're trying to give it some fresh eyes, some fresh perspective. And I thought from the keynote speakers to the different platforms of fish bowls that were held and different educational sessions focused on integrated facilities. So trying to integrate all of the things that go into facilities management was really important. I think that there's some things that we learned, as we do with all inaugural actions, but that I thought in general it went really well, and there was a lot of excitement in the room. I know that ASHE launched their core competencies for their education platform. So there was a lot of things happening all at one time, which can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it was a lot to take in, but it was a really great conference. We had a great turnout. We had, as with all things in facilities, a little bit of disruption with the CrowdStrike and some of the planes and those kinds of things, which I think threw a wrench for some people who weren't able to make it. I know people that I was looking forward to seeing there couldn't get in till Tuesday because of everything that happened. So I think there was a couple of factors in there that probably changed some dynamics. But
yes, yeah, definitely. So I'm out here in New England, and a lot of I shouldn't say a lot, but a number of the folks on the NEHES board, the New England Healthcare Engineers Society, they did not make it out there just because of travel issues. They spent all day Saturday in an airport, and on Sunday couldn't get back out. So it's true. That's funny. You talk about, so you've been going since 2008. And so this is my 3rd month here at Cref after, Gosselin Martin Associates and our recruiting aspect. And I was telling one of my new colleagues that, you go to that conference, and in some ways it's like going to a family reunion in that, you see the same people and I say that in a good way. You see people you've met over the years, and you connect with them, and you connect with them in person. So it's great for the networking. It's great for the education. It's great from a business development perspective, but then kind of at the core, it's great just to connect with people and see people that you may only see. And I think that, kind of speaks to the need for just that interaction that we all need. I mean, we've gone in some ways overboard with technology, but to be able to see people face to face, you still can't beat it.
absolutely, and it's funny you use family reunion because I actually use that as well, trying to explain some of that connection to some of the new members and people who had never come to the conference. So they held a new attendee orientation, and they asked the board members who were there to give some advice, and I said, this is like a family reunion. The first year it feels, you don't know anybody, but the next year even if you haven't seen them in that 1 year's time, all of a sudden you have that connection, and it's how have you been, and how's your family, and what are you doing at your facility, and how did this impact you? And you pick up conversations right where you left off.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a good way to put it. And I agree with you. I thought I enjoyed the conference here. There wasn't I think in years past, sometimes there was downtime if you didn't want to go, if you'd done everything that you had set out to do on the exhibitor floor. Sometimes you're okay, what am I going to do next? But this year it was like everything, your time is full. Should you choose to have it that way? There's always something to do.
It was really full. I mean, there was always something to do. We had a lot of participation in the trade show and the vendor floor this year. I felt it was so many to be able to get to and talk to and find trinkets as always. But, I always come back with more than what I came, which I appreciate. But it felt really great. It was a very large platform for being able to talk to different people and find different products.
Cref provides strategic real estate solutions that enable organizations to get the most out of their physical infrastructure. At Cref, the difference is we're not just advisors, we're operators. Our expertise in strategic asset advisory, project management, regulatory preparedness, and finding operational efficiencies allows us to provide organizations with end-to-end visibility and insight into their real estate portfolios and physical assets. Please visit us at www.cref.com.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about, if you could, tell us a little bit about your background, right? And right now, VP of Hospital Operations at Fairview. Tell us a bit about that, and tell us a bit about your professional background and how you came to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. My professional journey started, actually, I thought I would be on the provider side of healthcare. I had a lot of things with my family that influenced that, people in my, teens that had influenced being on the provider side of healthcare. I went to school in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and my college roommate and I took all the same classes, and she came back one weekend and said, hey, we have a safety minor at Stevens Point, and I was thinking about taking that as a backup plan. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. Let's do that. I was looking for a second minor anyway, or major. And so I have a background actually in biology, and then minors in chemistry and safety and health protection.
Biology, chemistry, safety, and wow, that's
yeah,
diverse,
exactly.
Right?
I surprise people.
Yeah.
And so, after I graduated college, what they don't tell you, they tell you a little bit more because you have access to a lot more technology. But what they don't tell you is that when you take general majors, you don't have a job right off the bat, So I dabbled at a clinic for a while. I worked at a clinic. They said, well, you really need to work at a hospital to get some hospital experience to really understand what you want to do. I was like, okay, that's great. So I got a job as an admin in medical imaging. I worked there about 3 months before I got recruited by the employee safety department. So then I was a safety coordinator. I did that for about 7 months before I got recruited by the director of facilities to be the emergency manager and employee safety coordinator. And so within 1 year's time-ish, just over 1 year, I changed roles 3 times at that hospital.
As long as you're going up and with the same hospital, that's fine.
Yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind.
Right.
But yeah, so I landed in facilities, and the first thing they said to me is, oh, by the way, you have emergency management. And on Fridays, we spend the entire morning in construction meetings because we were building an expansion at that time, a 6-story expansion. And so once in facilities, you, just like anybody, no matter what your background is in facilities, you get to learn everything else because we are a very encompassing job category. And so no matter what your background, you're going to learn something new. So I spent a lot of time in those construction meetings, learning employee safety, teaching nursing staff about fire safety. That was a primary focus, within my role in facilities emergency management. I was actually of the good fortune that that year, so I kind of started that role early 2000 or beginning of 2008. And that was the year of the Republican National Convention in St. Paul, Minnesota, which was 3 blocks from my hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got to do some super exciting things. There's nothing like on-the-job training
Right.
and learning by fire. And so I got to meet with the city and the county, and I got to be a part of meetings, we got to sit in different coordination centers with different multi-agency coordination centers. And it was the best learning experience I've ever had, is just going through that. And then we lived at our hospital like those 10 days leading up to and during the Republican National Convention. And so super great on the job training. Also got to learn more about facilities. My leaders and mentors and friends, they became, really taught me a lot about being a part of facilities. And I am a lifelong learner. I love learning. I think it's the best thing that we can do. And so the other thing that started to happen is I started going to my local ASHE chapter, which was the Twin City Healthcare. I got to learn from the engineers. And so I just, took a lot of time to spend time with different people, understand, what facilities was, spent a lot of time in regulatory because of, I had joint commission, was it that year? I think it was that year, lots of trial by fire that year. And so you learn a lot, and you kind of learn what you like to do, and you get guided by the people who have taken the time to spend with you. And so then I worked on through that whole time, worked there for a few years. Well, that was 8 more years. I was there almost 10 years total at that hospital. Yep. I got involved in my local board. So in 2013, I was asked to serve on my local chapter board for Twin City Healthcare. I sat for my CHFM exam and earned my CHFM. I became the engineering manager. There was some, as healthcare ebbs and flows, there's always changes, and there was an opportunity to be the engineering manager. And so I took that role. And
Can
then
I ask you a question about that? Did you have, when you made that transition, were you a little nervous, or how did you have to be talked into it? Were you happy to jump over to the engineering side? Tell me a little bit about your thought process before you took it.
Sure. Well, I mean, because I was in the department and I was in all the meetings, we did a lot of things as a leadership team. It was never just the engineering manager, you're going to do this. We were a team. And that team model really helped us, one, get a lot of work done. When you do more with less and you have less people, which is exactly what was going on during that time period, you need, many hands make short work. And so that was our motto. We were a team when we needed to fill in for each other. And so they really taught me along the way around, what some of the expectations were, what I needed to know so that I could make sound decisions. And honestly, the leads encouraged me to apply for that position. And when you get that kind of support, it is much easier to take that role. I had I had earned my CHFM, but you want to make sure that your team also wants you to be in that role.
Yeah.
And so that made a huge difference.
Yep. That really does.
Yeah. So I served there for a year, and then I took a director of facilities role at a different hospital at St. John's, where I am today. I was at just St. John's for about a year before I took the East region. So had multiple hospitals as the director of facilities. And then I decided, I should go back to school during COVID. And
What would drive you to do that?
The funny thing is, I always wanted to go back. I think that there's value in getting my master's of business because there are certain things that you're able to articulate, that you're able to demonstrate, that open up doors that in different ways.
Absolutely.
And for me, I really wanted to do it in a very intentional way. I joined the University of St. Thomas has a cohort MBA program. And so you actually, it was 30 of us, and there was physicians and nurses and people from different healthcare insurance companies. And so you got a great perspective. But I told my husband, I said, our kids are young enough. We are going to be kind of slow for the, meaning our life as far as kids and activities and those kinds of things for this next year are going to be less intense.
Yeah.
It's a good time for me to get this off the ground. And so that's what I did. And
Good
so I
move.
went back, got my MBA.
Wow. That, it's impressive that you thought about to do it early on. Like you saw the slowdown and said, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this by doing this. Perfect timing. Did you finish? So did it take you 18 months to get through it, or?
Yep, 22 months. So it's a 22-month program. So I started September of 2020 and graduated May of 22.
So do you think that you talked about the MBA potentially opening doors for you? Was the VP of hospital operations one of those doors that opened because of the MBA?
Yes, it was. It's a requirement of this role. And the person in this role, I didn't think she was going to retire. Her and I had a great relationship. I didn't think she was going to retire at that very moment. It happened. And I was able to apply and earn this job. So I was very grateful that I had taken that step. It was a very, I actually talk to people about it now. It's like, why did you do it? Why'd you pick, MBA versus MAJ? And my first leader and facilities director, when I was employee safety and emergency management, I was looking at what is that next role? Because when you're in the early stages of your career, you're trying to find the path, right?
Yeah.
And he had I remember the conversation. We were in his office having this conversation. He said to me that there was another role, and he's like, you could do that, but it's going to limit you. And you should really, especially at that time of my career, make sure that your possibilities are always open, because your path takes many directions, right? Sometimes we don't know why that happens. It happens always for the reasons that it should. I truly believe that. My path has felt that way. But because of that conversation, I try to remember that and look at, when I take the next step, why am I doing it? What's the reasoning behind it? And not only is it can't just be one job. You can't say, I'm going to do this because I want this one job. What is the impact you're trying to make? Because that may be a different job title than you think that it is.
Yeah.
But you want to be able to keep your possibilities open. And so I was grateful that it happened at the right time for me to be able to do that.
That is so we've been doing these for about a year now, on the healthcare facilities network. And that's one of the reasons what you just articulated is one of the reasons I love talking to people from this field, because I think, people sometimes minimize their path. They think, they don't value it, I think, as much as they should, right? They don't think they've accomplished this. But when you just articulated it perfectly, your career path is unique to you. Everybody's got a little unique story. Everybody has these, you're not making headlines, but you have these little pitchforks or these little forks in the road that determine where you go. And I love listening to stuff like that, because when people hear it, they're like, oh, I can do that. Or, I never thought of that. Maybe I should go that way. So that's it's a great story. You probably did you ever think you would be a VP of hospital operations?
I really did not. That is not what I thought.
Oh, no. And that's fantastic. We did, at the annual, I did a session with Jeff O'Neill, kind of around like planning your career and succession planning. And during the class, we were talking about one of the things that can help you is just like informationally interview with people, just to find out about other areas. Like, you're not looking for a job, you're not looking for them to hire you, just want to find out information and stuff like, that you talking to your peers, you talking to other people. It can just expand your mind more than you just thinking in your head all the time.
And it's so important that you embrace that. And really, it's hard to sometimes take advice, so don't think of it as advice. Think of it as just a perspective. Everybody comes with their own perspective, and sometimes it's good to listen to other people and how they were on their journey so
Absolutely.
that you can understand that it's not always a ladder. It's not always a straight and narrow.
No.
It's a journey, and
Yeah.
it should be something that's embraced and something that's unique to you, as you said.
Yeah, because that's straight and narrow. Those people are the outliers. There are a few of them who are straight and narrow. Most people are kind of all over.
Well, and it makes life way more fun because you meet a lot more people along the way.
That is true. So let's transition. Let's transition over to the presidency, which you're running for. And I think the voting open July 21st and goes through August 21st.
Yes. Yep.
So we got 1 month to vote. Why are you running for ASHE president?
So, again, when I started this career journey, I didn't know ASHE. My first conference was in 2008. That was my first exposure to ASHE. And it had a lot to do with the people that I worked for. They said, well, you should be an ASHE member. There's all these great resources. And I went to my first conference and you just absorb things. You're like, wow, there's a lot of information because we cover such a broad spectrum of topics. Employee safety, emergency management, facilities management, engineering, architectural, the PDC component of it. There's just a lot there. And so I am very interested because I love to learn. And so it really started though when I started to get involved in my local chapter. And a lot of that is just seeing the potential of how we can support other people. I am very grateful for the opportunities that have been given to me because of how I was supported. So I showed up at a meeting. I was 9 months pregnant with my second child. And they said, hey, you haven't gone through this cycle yet. Do you want to be on the board? And I said, I'm 9 months pregnant. And they're like, that's okay. It's May. We don't start our, sessions back up until September. By then you'll be back and ready to go. And sure enough, I was. And so I always thought that it would be great to be on the board. I think when I was in high school, even I got involved in National Honor Societies, different boards through different programs in college. I was on a board. I really appreciate volunteerism. I think that there's a lot of work that can be done that we individually have to do to make things have an impact. So we can't do that without our individual efforts into that. And you can't do everything. And that's one thing I've learned over the years is that it's sometimes hard to say no, but you have to. And you have to do the things that one are important to you, that you feel a lot of purpose around, but also that you know that you can put your efforts into. And so I said yes, got involved in that board, learned a lot, and a lot of what other people are looking for from local membership and then ASHE membership. And like I said, the more you get involved, the more people you get to know. Just like the Innovation Conference, when you show up and all of a sudden you feel like you know half the room.
Yeah.
And so as I got more involved, I received the Emerging Leader Award. And so for the Twin City chapter. And so I went to the ASHE Leadership Development Institute where I met ASHE board members and different people, got involved in volunteer opportunities through the national organization, which just opened up a whole nother avenue of people to connect with and learn from and become friends with. And so as I do that, it's really important to me about how we support our members. And the more I get involved, the more that shines a light. And so when I was involved in the Twin City chapter at the time, that was the only chapter that was affiliated with ASHE. And at the time we had 5 chapters within the state of Minnesota, but the other 4 weren't receiving the benefits because you have to have insurance, you have to have, for the board members, you have to be a 501c3, you have to do certain things to be an organization and create safety measures for the people who do volunteer. You want to make sure that there's personal liability separation from the organization you're serving. And not everybody could do that. And so I worked with those other chapter leader presidents, and I led it and kind of led that charge, did the paperwork, worked with ASHE, but we changed the membership or the agreement from Twin Cities so that just the largest metro one had those benefits to the state of Minnesota.
Well,
And we did that in 2019, which was such a great time to do it, because then we had 2020 happen, and as a state, we could interact with our Department of Health. Not that we didn't interact with them, but we could get more information out to the entire state of Minnesota than just the local metro area. And those are the kinds of things that I feel very strongly create a better impact for all of us. And so then I got involved in the ASHE. I ran for the ASHE advisory board, where I sit now for the Region 6. And I meet with my chapter leaders of the region on a quarterly basis to hear what's going on with them. How can we be a better bridge? What do they need from ASHE to support their members? Because with 12,000 people across our organization, that's a lot of people. But if you can find themes and move those forward to either, because you can't fix everything.
no.
Then as a somebody who's
here
running,
too, right?
right, you can't fix everything, but you can take things that you hear as themes, and what I hear is, how do we get tools and resources to our members? How do we make sure that we're getting education that's equitable and affordable? And how do we support the members and our local chapters? Because we know that things happen at our local chapters, and we know that there's things happening at the ASHE National. And I want to serve as that bridge as the ASHE president. I find those things are really important. Again, I believe in personally investing to be able to make an impact. I can only do so much. I focus on the things that I hear and feel matter to our members and our chapters, and then try to move the things that I can control and influence. And those are the things that I believe are what we're working on. Tools and resources, because those are the things that in our daily work, we can make an impact at our sites, but that also support the mission of ASHE to optimize our healthcare facility environment. That's what we do as our overall mission, but it's that daily effort, and you need those tools and resources to do that. You need education. I am a product of education. I have been able to, move through my career journey through different education, a lot of it influenced by ASHE. Had I not had those opportunities at those conferences, through the platforms, online, all of that kind of stuff, to learn to grow the local chapter meetings that we had every month, where our associate partners would come in and talk about chillers and different products and boilers. That is how you learn. And so my goal as the next ASHE president-elect, if I were to be elected, is to bridge what we're doing locally, and locally can be individual chapters or regionally, and what we're doing as ASHE, because there's a lot of big things happening at ASHE. We're right now doing our strategic plan. A lot of that's focused on member inclusion. We know that succession planning, we've been talking about it for 10 years, but COVID really changed a lot of things, and we need to continue that focus. And those are the ways that we're going to do that. So that's really why I feel strongly about running for the ASHE presidency. I've been able to work through those. I feel like I have a good understanding, not that I know everything, but a good understanding of what that means. Being somebody who has been able to be influenced through different people, through ASHE, through education, those things are important. And I want to make sure that we're continuing that forward so that we can continue all the work that we've already done into the future.
So, you kind of alluded to it about time, and also, as you're thinking about running, realizing, you actually have 1 year that you're serving, is it difficult, or was it, did you have to force yourself to kind of focus on these three? I imagine there's lots of ideas in your head, but you kind of have to fight through all those ideas to be laser focused on 2 to 3 different things that are achievable.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to do this all the time, right?
Yeah.
This is not,
Yeah.
we are the holders of all, right? And as a VP of operations, I have even more responsibilities for, that business operations, the support services side, not just facilities. And so there are only so many things that we can focus on and influence that's going to make an impact, which is the things that matter. And so it's that elephant. You can't, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Right.
And that's what we have to do. That's what I do in my daily work. And it's something that I apply to all the things that I do.
So what do you see as challenges and opportunities? And I ask you that question both, your lens is, you're an advisory board member, you're a VP at a hospital, you have many different lenses. What do you see as challenges and opportunities just overall within healthcare facilities management, both if you're, if you happen to be elected, if you're fortunate enough to be elected, and then going forward through the rest of your career? What's a challenge? What are some challenges? What are some opportunities you have identified?
Well, I think some of the challenges and opportunities that face everybody every day is how do we bridge the communication gap? And communication gap can be a lot of different things. It's how do you
ask for that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of different things. How do you communicate to nurses so that you can make an impact on the things that you're trying to make? Meaning they actually do the things you want them to do. They don't put the cart in front of the fire extinguisher, little things like that. Some of that is how we communicate, because a lot of our background is safety, emergency management, facilities, engineering, electrical. Not everybody speaks the same language. And so you have to be able to bridge that communication gap. And I think that's true too. We talk about, the executive suite, how you're communicating your needs, those kinds of things. And a lot of that has to do with how do we communicate our business needs? How do we make sure that we're speaking in the same languages to communicate the business component if you're looking at your operating budget, your capital budget, your, all of those things. So I think communication is always a challenge. I think getting tools and resources that help us bridge that communication gap, because we have one focus and everybody else has a different focus. And so, that's part of those tools and resources education that we can give to our members so that then they can do the things in their daily roles that then they make that impact on their facilities. And so those are the challenges. Resources, as far as people resources, are continuing to be a challenge. We have to do succession planning. That's young professionals. Those are people entering from outside of healthcare that want to get into healthcare. And you have to be able to, make sure that they have the resources and needs, because we all start somewhere. But a lot of that is us individually also making sure that we're doing our part to bring people along. So identifying people within your organization that are willing and want to learn, want to, maybe take an opportunity that they didn't think was possible. And so some of that starts at everybody's individual sites, but then how do we bridge that for ASHE? How do you help people become a mentor? How do you help them have different ways of getting involved in volunteerism? That is how we do succession planning in the long run. And you're right, 1 year is not enough time, but you're on the executive team for 3 years.
Yeah.
So you influence and have those conversations for a 3-year period of time. And you can do a lot of things in 3 years. And that's the buildup, right? You build it up. You serve as that president. You are that liaison. You are that person that people are coming to and communicating to. And then when you roll to that past president, it's your responsibility to be now somebody that helps the incoming. I mean, that's how I see it anyway.
How do you find time to do the succession planning? You must have to pray, because if you don't prioritize it, it doesn't happen. So how do you, with everything going on, find the time to make it happen?
You know, I'm sorry to laugh, but it's so interesting because I get that question a lot.
Well, and you know, I bring it up, as I said, Jeff and I did that, did the session, and it was really, I love doing things like that, sessions like that, because it's more of a, it's kind of like a back and forth with the folks who are in the crowd. It's interesting to hear some of the perspectives. You know, one of the folks who was in there was talking about succession planning and how his director talks about it, but doesn't implement it. How he talks about it, but then is very territorial, and you still hear those stories of territorialness. Is that a word?
Yeah.
You don't seem like you
I like
do that,
it.
right? But you all have the constraint of time, and it is a process, right? And it takes time. So that's why I ask it. I love hearing the different perspectives on that, because you might have something that could benefit somebody else.
You know, it is a balance. It's a balance. And for me, I'm fortunate because I've been doing so long, so I've integrated it into my, what I would call my daily work, you know, but, we have these amazing things called calendars, and
Which gets
I
picked up.
I use it, right? I
Yeah.
shouldn't say it's like that, but I do like to schedule that. And
Mhm.
I'm not always perfect at it, for sure. But I schedule it in my time, or sometimes it comes along where people come up to me and talk to me, or something comes through in an email, and I'm like, oh, that's a great opportunity. Let me connect this other person and reach out to them. And then what's really important is that it's not that you just start it, but that you close the loop on it.
Mm.
And so that's the part that's really hard. And like I said before, you can only do so many things. Like,
Right.
yes, I'm involved in a lot of things. I have 2 kids. My kids are 11 and 12, almost 13. You know, we're very busy. We are in the throes of chauffeurism, if that's a word. You know, we are running to hockey and lacrosse, and we're going to start football here pretty soon. And so I have to know that my day consists of work, which is important, the things that are not above and beyond, but that are important to the longevity of work, which is some of those succession plannings or those touch bases with people who are either entering their field or maybe want to connect one-on-one, those kinds of things. But then also balancing out that I still have to be there for my family and for myself. And so I think it's a balancing act, but I do schedule it, and I try to do it on a regular basis. So once, you know, because scheduling it in the moment sometimes is hard because you're very, very busy.
Yeah.
But if you schedule it like once a month or every 2 months or whatever that cadence looks like for you to be intentional about it, pretty soon that's always on your calendar, and it becomes part of your regular daily work.
It's a habit.
It's a habit.
Yeah.
Habits take a little bit to build. To
They
build
do.
them, though, it's
Yes.
part of your routine.
Yeah, and sometimes you, like you said, it's not always a straight line. Sometimes you go backwards a little bit before you go forwards.
Well, and you have to be okay with that. Sometimes it's accepting that there's times you can't.
Right.
And even though you want to, it's not the right time. But when it is, don't say yes.
Say yes. So Danielle Gathje, Vice President of Hospital, I took the S out. Vice President of Hospital Operations, Fairview Health Services in Minneapolis, Minnesota, also running to become the next ASHE president. So would that be 2026, right? 2026.
2026. Do you know where the ASHE Healthcare Innovation Conference is in 2026?
I'm going to guess Minneapolis.
It's in Minneapolis.
Wow, that would be exciting.
It would be exciting.
Wow. So running for ASHE president, if you want to see Danielle in Minneapolis, you need to vote for well, you'll see her there, obviously. But anything that that I didn't ask about, or anything you want to leave with potential voters or with healthcare facility workers, any final messages? And if you don't have one, that's all right. I kind of threw this question at the end, but any final words?
You're just putting me on the spot.
I did, and it can be as simple as vote for me. It can be as simple as vote for me, but I want to give the floor to you.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate the support and the vote, but I think most importantly, I think it's important to just know that you have people within ASHE that are going to try to move the organization in a way and bridge that gap for it to be better as we move people forward. I've been in this career long enough to know that the journey is important and it influences how we do our work. And that's the part that's really important. So I do appreciate the support. I would ask for your support as I try to connect those dots that I think are important to move ASHE forward.
Excellent. Danielle, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
I'm Peter Martin, Vice President of Business Development for Cref. As always, thank you for watching the Healthcare Facilities Network. Have a great day.